Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Seal DeGuglielmo. My guest on the podcast today is Selina Scott. She is the owner of Blueprint Custom Furnishings, a custom workroom and upholstery studio in Beaverton, Oregon. While her business is only 3 years old, Selina has 19 years of custom fabrication experience from her employment at a workroom in Portland, and then working on the side while being a stay-at-home parent. Selina enjoys sewing all kinds of things for herself and her family. She enjoys gardening, knitting, and camping road trips. I really hope that you enjoy hearing from Selina today. Hi, Selina. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's so nice to see you.
Hi, Seal. It's great to see you too. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for saying yes. I know sometimes that people get a little nervous, but the fact of the matter is we have so many different stories, and it doesn't matter where we are in our journey, there's something worth sharing. And your journey is not exactly like everybody else's. So I want to share that and talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So let's have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, where in the world you live, and a little bit about the important people in your life.
All right. My name is Selina Scott, and I live in Beaverton, Oregon. It's a suburb on the west side of the Portland metro area. And I am here with my husband and my 2 kids.
Tell me a little bit about how you got started. What is it you do, and how did you get started doing it?
So my business is called Blueprint Custom Furnishings, and I do custom soft goods and also upholstery. I started just about 3 years ago, actually. I had a plan somewhat in place to start in 2020. And we all know what happened that year. Instead of starting a business, I was suddenly an at-home teacher for my very young kids. In some ways it was a bit of a blessing because it gave me more time to figure out more things for my business.
So you had a plan to open a business. Did you have skills set in place? What made you decide you decided it was time to start a business. Time had other plans for you, but why did you come to the conclusion that it was time for you to start a business?
Well, I already had the skills. I started my career in custom sewing back in 2006.
Okay.
Funny enough, I found the job, like my dream job, when I was living on the other side of the world.
Oh my goodness, you're kidding me. I knew your story was different. That part I did not know. So tell us what happened.
So my husband and I were living in Malaysia. He worked at the time. He was working for a big tech company that had an office and a factory over there. Lots of big tech companies are in this particular area. And it was only about a year after we got married. And he said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity. They need someone to go over and learn this stuff and bring it back. Should we go for it?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, of course we should. I mean, that's an amazing opportunity." So we ended up spending 8 months in Penang, Malaysia. And I had already started doing a little bit of work. I had taken some upholstery classes about a year prior to that. I've always sewn.
Okay.
And in college, I studied interior architecture, which I didn't move forward with in terms of a career. But in doing that education, I learned a lot about furniture, and I always loved furniture, and I loved sewing. And, after college, I thought, oh man, I should really, it would be great to actually learn this. And I was lucky enough that at the time, our local community college was offering upholstery classes.
Oh, okay.
Which was great. It was, wasn't formal training. It was very project based, like bring your chair in. I'm going to teach you how to redo this. And I just loved it. I had so much fun. And so fast forward back to us living in Malaysia, and, I was what was called a follow-on spouse. I couldn't work.
Ouch.
Yeah. You had to have a visa sponsored by a company to be able to work there. So, I did other things and I volunteered and, made friends. But one of the things I would do, I would get on Craigslist and I would look at furniture back in my hometown that I could not buy. So I was kind of like torturing myself.
I was gonna say, that's torture.
I know. I was, kind of planning for the future. And just for some reason, I hopped on over to the job board. I was just scrolling through. I really felt like it was kind of fate. And there was this job listing. A shop needed a seamstress to come in and work. And it was a custom home goods, custom soft goods workroom. I didn't know the term workroom at the time.
Right.
Just thought, oh my gosh, that is my dream job. And so I emailed the owner and I said, this sounds crazy. I'm living on the other side of the world right now. I won't be home for another 4 months, but I will be home for a visit in about 2. Could I come take a look at your shop? Could we talk? And she said, sure. So, we were home for a visit and went and checked it out. And I was just like, this is great. This is amazing. I would love to do this. I feel like it's a great fit for the skills I already have. And she said, okay, give me a call when you get back from, your time abroad. And I did. And in May of 2006, I started my job with her.
Wow. That's amazing.
It feels fortuitous that all happened. And so I spent about 7.5 years working for her. The shop was called Nip and Tuck Fine Sewing.
I love that.
Yeah. And Nancy, the owner, she taught me everything, absolutely everything. We here in the Northwest we don't have a lot of really specified shops. Like we don't have a ton of like just soft goods or just draperies. It's not like other parts of the country where people can really just focus on like one very narrow product. So yeah, we did everything. We did, pillows, cushions. She really specialized in slip covers, every kind of drapery, window coverings.
Wow.
Light upholstery. I didn't do a whole lot of upholstery for her, beyond like, slip seats and easy things like that. But yeah, it was.
Wow. What an opportunity to learn all of that from her. And when you were working with her, did she go over the business side of things with you at all?
Not necessarily on purpose, but when you are working in a small shop,
Mm-hmm.
and the number of people she employed definitely fluctuated over the years. There were times when it was just her and I.
Okay.
That was it. And so I got to see a lot of the business side of things. And, I think within a couple, 2-3 years, I was doing a lot of that stuff. I was working with customers. I was working with designers. I was ordering supplies, doing it all. I was kind of like almost like a co business runner. I obviously wasn't, financially invested into it the way she was. But yeah, I definitely saw how she ran the business and also a lot of the ways she really, really struggled.
Okay. You had a really interesting perspective into running this business before you made the decision. Okay. So tell us how you made the decision. Was it to break from her? Was it like, what were the circumstances that brought you to that decision?
Well, I started a family, and and I decided to, go ahead and stop working, before I had my first child. And, a lot of that had to do with just the financial aspect of it. I wasn't making a ton of money. This job was completely on the other side of the city. So I was like, I can't even imagine commuting and being on the other side of the city, like, would I have a kid in daycare near me, or would I have a kid in daycare near my husband on the complete other side? And, all of those things, it really made sense to just be home for a while. And I really did, we left obviously very amicably. I was very sad to leave my job because I really did enjoy it. But I did leave knowing that eventually I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to, have my own control and hopefully more support than she did.
Okay.
I think a lot of her struggles were really, just lack of community, lack of support. Being a sole business owner, being a woman sole business owner is difficult. There's so many, doubts about
right.
how you're doing business. And she didn't have that support, in terms of pricing and how she dealt with, difficult customers and difficult designers, and, focusing in on what kinds of projects she wanted to take on versus projects she felt she had to take on.
Yeah.
Wow,
what amazing insight you had the opportunity to have just by working with her.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, the area of the country that you are in is not overrun with workrooms and things like that. So when you made the decision to open up your own business, was it something you discussed with her? Did you reach out to her about it? Had you lost contact with her? Like, where did things stand with that?
Yeah, we definitely kind of lost contact. I was in the midst of raising two very small kids. A lot of that really a lot of my personal work went by the wayside for, a good 5+ years. There's just no time when you've got tiny kids.
Absolutely.
To do that kind of work.
Okay. All right. So you've decided it's time to start. We hit a pandemic. So what did you do and how did you decide to proceed with that?
Well, prior to the pandemic, I was getting ready. I took another class through our local community college that was all about small business startups.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it was led by a person who is a SCORE mentor, yes, which was great. Funny enough, I actually haven't gotten a SCORE mentor. Maybe we should probably do that. But it was wonderful information, and it was very empowering to kind of have a path forward of where to go, what to do, things to consider. I mean, it was everything from getting started in the legalities to, having your exit strategy of, you start a business, with the thought that at some day that business is not going to exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And, have some of those things in mind. So I did that, kind of was getting rolling a little bit, hoping that, sometime in 2020, I would start a business, because my youngest would be going into preschool. I was like, okay, yes, I'm going to have more time. I can do this. So pandemic happens, things go by the wayside.
They're both home full time.
They're both home full time. And I took another class. I took an online presentation from a woman named Tiffany Stahl. She owns a business called The Artists JD. And she presented a class as part of the online offerings for a sewing expo that I go to fairly often here in the Northwest. And it was all about like the 5 legal tasks you need to do to start a business. And it was kind of a great little like refresher, a little boost of like, oh, that's right. Like this is a thing that's out there, in the midst of all of this insanity around, being at home and, just all those worries of the time. It was a nice little reminder of like, okay, yeah, like I've got this. This is something I could still do.
Okay.
And then let's see, I'm trying to remember the right year. Early 2022, I got the email that the custom workroom conference would be happening again that year.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, that's it. I'm going to start my business this year.
Oh, that is so awesome. I love hearing that.
Yeah. I was just like, okay, I'm going to go to this conference. This is my sign. Like this, we're ready to roll. Let's do this. Yeah. So that was kind of it.
Okay, I love that. And Selina, I love that you had not only the education about how to create the product and do the fabrication, but you really did make an effort to do the business part of it and the legal part of it and all of that. And it's funny, we were talking before we started to record about the school year. Your kids just finished school, and the elementary school and the preschool that my children went to is in my neighborhood. So I walk past them frequently. And while it's been many, many, many years since either of them were in there, I was having this vivid memory this morning. First of all, nursery school ended weeks before elementary school did. So instead of having a couple of hours in the middle of the part of the day, whether morning or afternoon, where I didn't have any children home and I could get some things done. I had one who was bored and missed her sister. And I was thinking about, because today is the date that we are recording this, it's the last day of school in my school district. And I'm watching all the kids come into school and I'm thinking, and tomorrow starts, I'm bored. What do we do? And you had your children home full time when you did not expect them to. It's really challenging to run a business when your children are at home. And it's so funny to me because I recently heard someone talking about childcare for their grandchild. And they were saying, well, they couldn't possibly take care of the baby and work, and they're working from home. And then, like in the next breath, they were talking about someone who started their own business and it was more of a creative business. I'm like, well, I don't know why they have to pay childcare. I'm like, because they're working and you can't do both. And
Exactly.
and you've participated in the focus room on the library. We work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. You don't even get 25 minutes when your kids are home. And that's fair.
Not at all.
They absolutely want you and want to be around you. And being a parent is a full-time job. And that's why most of us leave our homes to go to our jobs, because we can't do both at the same time. So I'm fascinated with the timing of it, because it really could have been so stressful for you to have started and then really have it all pulled back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what kind of business do you have? What are you to the trade, retail? What is your primary product that you're selling?
Right now, I do mostly retail. Ideally, I would love to get more, accounts going with designers. And the majority of what I'm doing right now is upholstery.
Okay.
Which is a little surprising, because when I started my business, I did not think upholstery was going to be a large part of it.
Okay.
But then I went to the Custom Workroom conference in 2022, and I did start hearing about kind of, frankly, the dire situation with upholstery education. There's so many people kind of aging out and retiring,
right.
And there's a lot of kind of new people, but there's not a whole lot in the middle,
right.
And also just the education aspect it's difficult right now. There's not a whole lot out there that's in person. Granted, there are some really fantastic online options, but truly, some of those things it just works better in person when you can have someone go, just like, pull this way instead of that way, or, oh, I can see, this is happening, so do this instead. So yeah, based on that information, I realized that I wanted to do more in the upholstery space. So I started, trying to take on more of that work, taking more classes online, just doing more research. I joined the National Upholstery Association while I was at CWC.
Okay. I was going to ask you about that. I figured you were a member.
Yeah. And they have some really, really wonderful, they do like a monthly Zoom meeting, with a professional that, presents certain topics. They have, mentorship opportunities. And in general, just it's nice to have that community and know that other people are out there.
Just like the woman that you worked for didn't have. And
yeah, exactly.
Somebody like, why is this webbing not working the way I expect it to? Oh, because I'm using the wrong kind. And you're right. I think in person makes such a difference. I know we're all different. I know some of us are more introverted and really don't want to be around a lot of other people, but I love that the conference was part of what made you decide, all right, I'm going to start a business. And I've shared this story before, but I accidentally found out about it was Cheryl Strickland, which is a name that all the older people in our industry know, but not necessarily the younger ones. She was holding a conference very close to my home. And I found out about it on a professional, most of the people in the group that I belong to were professional garment sewers. I was making bridal headpieces at the time, looking for a different way to make money. And I found out about this conference, and you're right. I went, saw all these people, found out what a workroom was, and went, oh, this is what I should be doing. So you're right. There's absolutely no substitute for being in person and being able to learn from people. You've got some skills. You can take an online course and benefit from it. But as you said, having tilt your hand this way and the needle will go through easier, or do this, it just makes such a difference. And knowing that you have that group of people. I mean, honestly, I already belonged. This is like dinosaur times when we had like a email that went out at night with all of the questions and answers that people had, and I could go through it after my kids went to bed. That was the only communication we had. And yeah, and then I met people in person and met people who lived near me. Like you are kidding me, right? So I'm curious, have you found anyone who's nearby, or are you still in a lonely area of the country?
I found I do have one other person. She also mostly does bridal and custom, like she does alterations and custom garments for people, but she does occasionally do kind of some soft furnishings. And actually, she's been shuffling some work to me. She's like, I am completely overloaded. Is this something you could take on? Yes, okay. Absolutely. So I've made a little bit, but I have. Honestly, I haven't made a big effort to like get in contact with other upholsterers in the area. That's probably should be on my to-do list. It would be nice to know who else is out there.
Yeah. I feel like, Selina, the education that you had working in the shop gave you a little bit of a different perspective getting started, because sometimes it feels like drinking out of a fire hydrant when you're first learning, like your new friend who has sewing skills, but then, oh, okay, but cushions need to be this and this needs to be that. And you had a lot of that knowledge already, but it still feels like, there's a lot. It's a lot different working by yourself in a shop or in your shop or your workroom than it is working with other people. So it's still, I'm constantly just delighted when I hear about people meeting up at the Custom Workroom Conference and finding somebody who's not that far from them and all of that. So where is your workroom? Is it in your home, outside your home?
I am currently in part of it. I'm very lucky that we have a daylight basement to our home.
Nice.
And it is all mine.
Very
Initially,
nice.
yeah, so it's great. It's enough space that, I have one space here that I'm in that has a padded table. And then in the bigger space, I have just a, plain cutting table, for doing, more like upholstery, sheet goods and things, space for my industrials, storage, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I feel so lucky to have this space and be able to do it out of my home and not have that expense and worry of an external
Right.
shop space.
Yeah. The conversation about that goes back and forth. I know there are people who said they did not feel like a professional until they rented a space or took the business out of their home. And there's the plus and minus of yours is downstairs. Can you close the door at the end of the day and not think about it? All right.
Yes.
All right. You can close the door. Can you walk away? Do you find yourself going back to it?
I think I can do pretty well with walking away.
Okay.
I mean, I do find myself down here a lot because I do a lot of sewing for myself personally. I do other projects for myself. But I think I do kind of, separate those things.
And also the age of your kids. When you close that door at night, it's, supper, it's homework, it's
so many other things to focus on.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much to focus on that it could be, midnight before you go, oh yeah, I was going to go back downstairs. No, I'm not. Not happening. So I'm curious for you, Selina, what have been some of the biggest challenges so far in running your business?
Trying to find customers, trying to get my name out there, especially to, my ideal customer of, interior designers. That has been hard. I mean, everything I've done so far has, for the most part, been word of mouth, which I absolutely appreciate so much when, friends or, friends of friends, come to me. So definitely trying to find my, kind of access my ideal customer without feeling, I don't know, awkward or desperate. It's such a hard part. I'm not naturally like a boastful, hey, look at me, I'm so awesome, kind of person. So that personal, what's the word? Personal promotion.
Oh, yes. And that's not comfortable for me either. So I totally understand that. Yeah.
I think that's been the hardest.
Okay. The sponsors of the So Much More podcast allow me to bring guests to you each week. And without them, I couldn't do it. I'm pleased as the owner of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library that I can use the library to help sponsor the podcast as well. The library hosts the industry's largest curated collection of educational resources for the custom home furnishings professional. Membership to the library gives you access to a wealth of downloadable reference materials, videos, live events, as well as a community of support to help you develop your design, sales, and fabrication skills, and to grow or start a business. Join the library today at csfrl.org. The Workroom channel is the premier online training provider for professional fabrication skills. Go to theworkroomchannel.com to browse the selection of anytime access courses created by industry experts. Watch detailed demonstration videos, download companion materials, and participate in private course discussion boards with your instructor and classmates from around the world. Start your course path today at theworkroomchannel.com. Education, networking, visibility, and industry discounts are just a few of the benefits that are offered to members of the Window Covering Association of America. The WCAA is the only national nonprofit trade association that's dedicated to the window coverings industry and the dealers, decorators, workrooms, designers, and installers that make up our membership. The library is a gold level sponsor of the WCAA. Join today at WCAA.org. WCAA, where you are never in business alone. Discover Klimaka Studios, where innovation meets exceptional design. Klimaka fabric and wallpaper collections are inspired by the original works of collaborating artists and developed with the understanding of how fabrics are manipulated into exquisite soft home furnishings. Workroom businesses enjoy exclusive access to engineered designs and best trade pricing. From clever layouts to classic linen prints, Klimaka Studios delivers the quality and consistency that your business demands. And Klimaka's reliable, on-time delivery keeps your projects running smoothly. Go to KlimakaStudios.com for swatches and trade account information. Klimaka Studios, for the joy and profit of workrooms. I'm curious about what your definition of success is.
Ooh. I'm also curious.
Good.
I definitely know I haven't gotten there yet. I'm not really sure. I think somewhat some part of it would be, just kind of the basics of, consistent projects coming in, happy customers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like I'm still so new in the business, being only 3 years in that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I still feel like it's just a struggle kind of with like the basics of getting started.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So I'm really curious to ask this question of you because you have had the experience of working for someone else and working in another workroom. What do you do when you make a mistake and how do you handle it?
Oh, walk away. Don't work mad or frustrated or upset. Nothing good ever comes of that. I know for sure.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody express it like that. Don't work mad. That's really smart.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to ruin something. I'm going to hurt myself. Especially, the tools of upholstery. There can be some pretty yucky hand injuries.
Yes, you're right. And we've seen them on Facebook.
Sure have. Take some time to calm down. Go contact someone who maybe can help you, figure out a solution.
Okay.
And again, kind of going back to having communities like the library or the NUA. There's also the Professional Upholsterers Network on Facebook. That is an absolutely wonderful group, and I am grateful. I am grateful for them every single day because even if I don't have a question about something, seeing the questions that other people ask, oftentimes I'm like, oh, I've had that question before. I'm gonna write down these answers and these ideas. Just take some time. And also, learn from the mistake, because sometimes mistakes aren't like, oh man, I, made a wrong cut or, maybe it was, kind of something interpersonal with a client, try to learn from those, slow down and, just slow down and learn from them for the next time.
I love that. And the reason I was so curious to hear your response is because I think that there is a difference. No one likes to make mistakes, but if you make a mistake in someone else's shop when you are working for them at an hourly fee, it's not the same as when you cut
Hmm.
$250 a yard fabric that you have ordered for that client. And now you have to replace
Uh-huh.
it at your own expense. There's definitely, I've worked, helped out, or been in shops where people have employees, and there's definitely like, oh crap, look what I did, and but when you're the one who makes it and you're the one who has to pay for it, that's a different experience. So I was really curious about that.
Yeah, it sure is. I do remember my first really big screw up in the shop that I was working for. And I was upset enough that she just sent me home. She's like, I can see like this is bad enough.
Mhm.
And everything's fixable
Yes.
to some degree.
Yes.
And it ended up fine. But yeah, that's I was glad for her response in that way instead of suck it up deal, keep
Yeah.
working.
Right. And I think that we're much nicer to other people than we are to ourselves sometimes. And that's also was behind my curiosity for that.
For sure.
So all of that being considered, have you ever thought about quitting?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When the whole comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
Oh man, that is so fantastically true. It is horribly true. And yeah, I see, you know, there's a fairly large shop in town that does lots of like commercial custom, and they just announced that they're starting to do upholstery, and I'm just like, why am I even doing this?
Yes. Yes.
I'm like, no, they're going to have different customers than I'm going to have,
Yes.
and that's okay. There's room for all of us, and I know in my heart, for the most part, the majority of us, we are in it for the community over the competition.
Mm.
You know,
Absolutely.
I very strongly believe in community over competition,
Mhm.
and finding the people that have that same mindset, and being okay inhabiting your own little niche.
Right. And I think that for those of us who have a variety of skills, you see something like them opening up the shop and you just go, all right, great. Then you get over yourself and you go, yes,
Yeah.
but I also do this and I do this and I do this. And if you're working with interior designers and holding their hand and helping them to pick the right things, a larger shop might not have time for that. And
Mm-hmm.
that is a service that you can provide, but we don't always think of that when we first see someone doing something similar to us.
Yeah.
So that in mind, if you were not doing this as a career, what do you think you'd be doing?
Oh my gosh, I really don't know.
Okay.
I If I'm not sewing most days, or creating, I go a little stir crazy. So it would have to be something else creative. I would probably be working for somebody else,
Okay.
doing something creative. Creating with my hands is
Okay.
really a core part of who I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. So you've mentioned some online classes. You've mentioned the National Upholstery Association. I'll put links to those in the show notes. But do you have any books that you would recommend, or any classes, any specific classes that you've taken that have made a big difference for you?
I picked up I believe it's the Spruce upholstery book.
Oh, yes. I've heard a couple of
Yeah, and that was recommended to me by Rhonda Shanahan. I took a leather upholstery workshop from her last year, and she kind of went through her books, and that one is fantastic, just because it is very step by step really good pictures, a nice variety of projects in that book.
Okay.
And I do find myself going back to it quite often just to kind of double check and make sure I'm actually doing things like in the right order and not, like not spacing out and forgetting to put like burlap, put that burlap down before you put on your outside back, or you're going to have a saggy, wobbly, outside back. Yeah, I really like that one.
Okay. Do you use much technology in your business?
Beyond, not really. Like, beyond my website and
Our hands. So it's a question I ask because I'm fascinated by technology, but it's also without our hands, we really can't get a whole lot done. So it's kind of, I know some people have introduced technology into their businesses, but some people are, just not big tech people. And that fascinates me too.
Yeah, no, not really.
So what 3 business items could you not live without?
Okay, I wrote down answers for this one because I really had to think about it for a little bit. So beyond, I think there's the obvious of like my sewing machine and my upholstery setup. I would say my community.
Okay.
The business classes I have taken just because, it's that confidence boost that,
Right.
you're doing the right thing. And I would say my husband's patience.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because especially when it comes to certain technology things, I can get very easily frustrated. And he's very calm. He works in that industry anyway. So sometimes I will like offload research on things or like, can you just walk me through this one more time? And he's wonderfully patient with that. And I could not do this.
Wow. I love that. I've never gotten an answer like that before. I love that. So I do ask the question, do you sew for pleasure? I ask it for 2 reasons. I'm always curious about people creating a business off of a skill or a hobby or something that they enjoy doing. And your start was a little different, but you already mentioned that you do some sewing for yourself. The other reason I ask is because until recently, I was not doing any sewing for myself, and I realized how much I missed it. So what do you like to make, since you've already admitted that you do it all the time?
I make the majority of my clothes.
Okay.
So I sew a lot of clothes. My sewing practice has slowed down a little bit recently. But yeah, I love that freedom of making what I want. And, I do like costumes for my kids for Halloween. In like the past 3 years or so, I've gotten more into cosplay. So like really intricate costumes and things, and learning leather work.
Garment sewing is so different from what you're doing with cushions and slip covers. Are you making any winter treatments?
I will do them occasionally when people ask me. I do Roman shades, probably more than, like cornices or valances, or, I haven't done a swag in probably a decade. Yeah.
But sewing clothes is very different from any of that sewing.
Very.
How is that for you? Is it a break? Is it a challenge? Is it like a relief? When you're sewing a garment for yourself versus having finished a Roman shade, what's the feeling for you?
I think for me, it is easy, and there's kind of a leisure to it because there's no timeline. I'm not thinking about like, okay, I need to keep working quickly. I can't, I can't stop and, ponder this one little detail. I just need to keep going. And, because I have been doing it for so long, I was sewing garments long before I got the job at the Workroom. And it's funny you bring up how different that sewing practice is between garments and workroom sewing. Because I went into that job thinking like, oh man, I am just gonna knock this out of the park. It's gonna be so great. Oh my gosh. I learned so much, and it actually made my garment sewing better.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It's just a different practice. I actually learned to use some of the feet on my machine that I had never used before,
Okay.
which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But back to the garment sewing. It's just a nice break.
Okay. All right. What's your favorite thing to work on in your workroom that's not garment related?
Not garment related. I really like boxed cushions. It sounds so boring, but there's something just really satisfying when it all goes together nicely and that piping is crisp and the zipper doesn't, wrinkle and buckle, and you get the insert in there, and you get everything, nicely situated, and it just looks great. Almost even more over pillows. That's just a nice,
Yeah.
very gratifying.
Yeah, it's funny because very often people will say either the pillows or cushions. First of all, they're more finite that you can get them done faster than almost any other project. And I have to agree, there is something about those crisp welt sides, the corners, when everything works well, I think they look fantastic. I love that.
You know,
Selina, what do you do extremely well?
the details.
Okay.
I very much consider myself a fabricator, not a designer. And so when someone comes to me with unique and interesting details, whether it's trim on a project or, whatever it is, I do really well at honing in on those small things on a project that make the difference of,
Okay.
kind of something basic versus something elevated that you're not necessarily going to get from either, a store bought product, or maybe something from someone who doesn't have as much experience.
Okay. All right. What do you not do so well?
Bookkeeping. That would be, yeah, I really struggle with the more kind of basic business side of running a business. It's kind of, I think, pretty common for a lot of us.
Yes, yes, I believe you're right.
The running of the business is not why we're in business, but it's a necessity.
Yes, unfortunately it is. What do you love best about this business?
Bringing people's ideas to life.
Ah,
When people have this vision of what they want, and when they get to see that thing in real life for the first time, like that is, that's it right there for me.
okay.
Such
I
a
love
great
that.
feeling.
What do you like least about this business?
Bookkeeping.
That does stand to reason.
Also, occasionally the kind of the client interactions that are difficult, when people need a lot of hand holding,
Okay.
and they can't make a decision, and it's not a decision that I can make for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we talk a lot about retail versus to the trade. And that's one of the reasons why I like being to the trade, is because of that. Yeah. I don't mind hand holding my interior designers, but the retail customer is not where I'm best suited. And so that's a struggle for me as well. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You will have teenagers at that point, and
yeah, I sure
but you will
will.
have some experience behind you. You already do, but it'll be a different kind of experience. What do you think this business will look like in 5 years?
In 5 years, I'll have at least a couple consistent designer, contracts.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have a better system for capturing, capturing projects. That's something I'm struggling with right now.
Okay.
Yeah, just better client flow.
Okay. That's excellent. I like that answer. Selina, how do you think you are? In what ways do you think you're resilient?
I keep coming down here every day. I keep at it. I keep learning and, searching out answers for things. And I keep trying even when I'm scared or I'm worried.
Yeah.
Oh, this makes it sound kind of harsh. This is entirely for me, but my phrase for the year is don't be a coward.
Okay. I don't think it's harsh as long as you don't beat yourself up with that statement.
But it has helped me kind of overcome some hurdles that I usually would just be like kind of shy away, like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. Actually signing up to do the Workroom accountability mentorship group, that was one of my don't be a coward moments.
Okay.
Because I remember hearing about it last year. I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's not for me. I'm not in a place to do that yet. And then it came back around because I became a paying member of the library last year. So I get your emails, which I love. And it came back around, I listened to the podcast with you and Susan, talking about it. I'm like, man, I should really do that. And I very nearly talked myself out of it again.
Wow.
And I even told my husband, I was like, I've been thinking about this. I don't know that I want to do it this year, kind of hemming and hawing about it. And like literally it was the last day and I was out running errands. So I sat in a grocery store parking lot in my car and filled out that form on my phone. It's like, you know what?
Oh my
No,
God.
don't be a coward. Just do it. Just do it. And so I did it.
Selina, I love that. And I've talked many times on the podcast, so this isn't a surprise. Fear is such a huge driver for me. And what I am recognizing as I get older is what it's cost me. And not doing things when I first think about them or when the opportunity comes up. What does it cost me that my fear has talked me out of hitting the send button or talked me out of hitting the apply button? And I'm so impressed with you because being afraid to do something is really difficult. And there have been so many times when I've done it and then, I attend that first meeting or I get the email that says, yes, you're in. And what was my problem?
I think really for me, the fear of failure and rejection it is always there. It is like entirely too big in my head.
Yes.
I'm trying
Same
to
here.
push back against that more and more. And it feels good. It feels good to push back against that and do the things, even though they're scary.
Yeah. The thing that bothers me is like you did it, you hit the apply button, but it's still going to come up again with the next thing. And that's the part that frustrates me. I'm like, okay, I'm showing up. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Why does it keep being scary? What's the problem here?
Right? Like, why can't this be a muscle? And like, it's
Yes,
easier over
yes.
time. Why does it have to still be a struggle?
If somebody could write a book about that, I'd really appreciate it. Oh my goodness. But it is true. The things that I have been most afraid of have put off the longest. And there are times that I have put things off for so long that it then became impossible to do them. Not because I wasn't capable of it, but the opportunity was no longer there, or someone else said yes. Yeah, all of the above. So that's impressive. And it's interesting because I was reading a book recently or listening to a podcast, whatever, and they were talking about how we speak to ourselves. And that's, certainly we should be kind to ourselves, but sometimes there's a word that, as you said, might sound a little bit harsh. Never use it on anybody else. But if that's the push you need and it's working, then there you go. Don't be a coward. Okay.
I would never say that to somebody else.
Of course not. Of course not. And we never talk to ourselves as nicely
No.
as we should. But again, if it's working.
It works. It does work. Yeah.
Selina, how can people find you? Are you on Facebook, Instagram? What social media channels are you on?
I do technically have a Facebook and Instagram business page. It is something I need to get better at because I'm terrible at posting my projects. But yes, I'm Blueprint Custom Furnishings.
Okay. And your website is beautiful. You have some beautiful projects on there.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
it's one of the things that I really put a lot of time into. Last year, I need some more updated photos of recent projects, but yeah, I feel good about that one.
Good. Because you've added way too many things to the list in this conversation. I want to end with you being proud of yourself for something.
I think I'll need to re-listen to this and be like, oh yeah, I said I need to do this. Add it to the goals for the year. Yeah.
Selina, what advice would you give to someone who's new in the business or even someone who's been in business for a while?
Try not to be afraid to make mistakes and practice. Practice, practice, practice. If there's a technique, if you've said yes to a project and there's a technique in there that you are unsure of, practice it. Whether it's zipper insertion or getting the corner right on a chair, even if you have to just, buy some random fabric, practice that. And to me, that's always been helpful. Practice, get those skills down before you cut into the good stuff. And finding community.
Yeah.
That has been such an immense game changer. It really made me feel confident.
Okay.
To start a business, knowing that I wasn't going to be just out here alone doing something.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Selina, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it. It was really fun to get to know you better.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. It still is a surprise to me because I don't feel like I've been, in business long enough to warrant this, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
But I think your story is still worth telling, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
I really hope that you enjoyed hearing from Selina today. I love talking with people who are new to our industry, although, as you heard, Selina is not as new as her business is. And I love that her start was a little bit different than some of us, and that she had an insight to running the business before she actually decided to open her own business. It's always so delightful for me to get to know the people in our industry through this podcast. And Selina was definitely not an exception to that. I love that she has a sense of community and not just benefiting from it, but contributing to it. And it was just really fun to hear her story, which is just a little bit different from some of the rest of us. I hope that you enjoyed hearing from Selina today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.